This is very exciting. Hi, I'm Dale Peterson, and welcome to the Unsolicited Response Show. Before I bring my guest on, I want to just give you a quick S4 update. We are now, as of Monday, September 27th, we have sold ticket number 242, so it looks like we're going to have a big crowd. But one of the things I like to do is I always like to get the agenda out there early. I appreciate the 242 people who bought tickets just based on faith. But I think if you're going to be asked to spend your time, which is the biggest asset you have, or your money on something, I want to let people know what they will see. So this Thursday, September 30th, I'll be putting out the main stage and stage 2 agendas. They're about 90% full. We're still, going to save some announcements for keynotes and a few other things, late breaking sort of things. But you'll see 90% of what'll be on stage 1, the main stage, and stage 2. Stage 3 will be coming out in October, but you'll have a good feeling as to what you would see at the event. You'll be able to see that at s4xevents.com, along with the speakers, the sponsors, and other information. So I'll include links to all that in the show notes, but stay tuned for that. Now, for this week's episode, I was really excited about it. We had him on, Mark Hyman. He's my guest for this episode. He is the managing partner at the Verge Management Group. Liz, can you bring him up? That's great. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Dale.
How you doing?
Good.
I had you on briefly to answer a question at the end of one of the episodes, and I got so much good feedback from that we decided to do a whole episode on ICS Security Careers. And since you and your company, Verge Management Group, specialize in helping people get jobs in that field and help companies fill openings in that field, I thought you'd be a great person to have on. So appreciate you coming back.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it. Excited to be here.
We both reached out to our audiences and said, hey, send us in your questions. And we got quite a few questions, more than we can actually handle in a 1-hour show. But I've tried to pick some of the ones that were common themes and such. And I grouped them into 3 areas. And we'll hit all 3 of these areas, beginning with getting into the ICS security field. We'll follow that up with some questions on what an experienced ICS security pro should be doing to grow their career. And then the third category, we'll spend a little bit of time on working with recruiters, what you should expect, what you should not expect. So does that sound okay to you?
Sounds good to me. Ready to go.
Okay, let's dive in. So we'll start out with getting into the ICS security field. And the first one, we'll start at the very beginning. We had someone send in a question, Canyon. He asked, he said, I am a management major and recently had an internship at an IT department at a power company. And I found a new great interest in ICS and OT. As a novice, where should I begin my ICS security journey? So this is someone right at the beginning, probably just out of college or about to graduate from college, little bit of experience through internship. How do they get their foot in the door, and which door should they try to get that foot in?
Man, this is, first of all, that's exciting to hear, right? I mean, you talk about somebody that's in college, in school, just now beginning. I mean, we need obviously more of these people, right? Mm-hmm. So it's that answer is so dependent on what side you want to get into, right? So if he was working in the IT department, is that what it was?
He had an internship at an IT department at a power company.
Okay, I think I know who this is. I'm
pretty, you don't know everyone in the industry, man.
I'm pretty sure I know who this is. Okay. But I'll just say this. First of all, awesome that somebody's doing this, because we want to encourage more and more just younger talent. I mean, Dale, folks like yourself, you guys are probably all going to be retiring. You're in Hawaii now, practically retired. But we need more of these people. So I think from a technical standpoint, look, I am just the recruiter, so I'm not going to be, I'm obviously not a practitioner. There's a lot of skill sets you got to learn. I've talked about this a little bit on the last show. Just basic things like networking, right? I mean, get things like this down. If you want to dive deeper, I mean, there's, get into OT specific protocols, right? Using tools like Wireshark or what have you to dive into packets. I mean, it completely depends on, what you're trying to do, right? And so the first thing I would tell somebody that's really trying to get into it, and this goes for somebody that's saying, "Hey, I want to get into cybersecurity. I hear about all these hacks. I want to, stop them, or I want to investigate them, or whatever. It's an exciting space." Is first of all, take a good hard look at yourself. Figure out the things that you're good at, that you enjoy doing. Right? Cybersecurity has so many different domains. There's just a lot of different routes you can take, and it doesn't all have to be, somebody who is a Python expert, or is diving into PCAPs. There's other things you can do. So I would, and ask people that know, right, that are in the space, find mentors, things like that. But just technically, from a very basic thing, and I'm saying just kind of 101, the things that, if I have a technical candidate and I'm presenting them to a client, if they don't have maybe these things, the networking, right, maybe some pretty basic Linux Unix command line, protocol knowledge, right? But I think that's a good start. But probably the best advice I could give Canyon is network, right?
Mm.
Dive in, spend time learning this stuff on your own. There's a lot of resources out there. Some of them we have on our webpage that's being kind of redeveloped right now, so we'll have more. But yeah, networking, find good mentors in this space, and ask them.
Mm. Yeah. And if I really look at the last line in his question, where should I begin my ICS security journey? I think what you mentioned about being self-aware in terms of what you like, what you want to do is extremely important. I would also early on look for opportunities where I'm going to be able to do a lot of different things and learn a lot of different things.
Yep.
Even if it's not the best paying job, even if it's not maybe where you want to end up in your career, but you'll find a lot of times some companies are, it might even be better to go to a company that doesn't have enough resources. They're short on manpower, and they're going to ask the new person to do all these things
Mm-hmm.
that maybe they shouldn't be doing, but hey, someone's got to do it. We don't have anyone assign it to the new person. So I'd really be looking hard at what was I going to be allowed to do in the first 2 years of my career, and
Yeah.
just get as much experience as I possibly can. And maybe the flip side of that would be if I had the chance to work with someone who was amazing, who would take me under my wing, maybe at that point I'd change my mind.
Yeah, I mean, go ask the people. I mean, if you're at an asset owner, right, and you're in the IT department, go ask to get in the field, right? Take a walk around the plant, or whatever it is, and ask the people in different disciplines. Hey, can I shadow you? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
especially early in the career, just absorb, learn, and take it all in, and don't pass up those chances to do that.
Okay, let's keep going here. We've got quite a few here. There was a question from your survey that you put out. Someone responded, do companies see experience from security more valuable than experience from automation, or vice versa?
Man, that's a good question. All right, so that's a question that I get asked all the time. I'm sorry, I ask all the time because I'm curious, and I
Mm,
get different answers all the time. Dale, I think I've even asked you that. You know, so the question is, from what I understand, is basically, if someone's coming from OT, is that valued as a better fit to learn the other side, IT/security, or vice versa? And my opinion on that, and I think I'm pretty sure I'm right, but it is completely up to the individual, right? It is completely up to the individual. I think if somebody is going to be agile and persistent in their learning and open to new ideas, and is going to learn things on their own and go, communicate with the other side of the aisle, we'll call it in IT, or vice versa. That's really what you need to do. I don't see a lot of preference. I think from hiring managers, they view it as there might be a preference if they came from OT,
yeah.
or vice versa. But I think as far as just the ability to perform, No, I don't think that there's one that's just right. And I'm not kidding you, Dale. I asked that question to just about everybody, and I've still not come up with a conclusive. Just you know what, it's definitely coming from OT, going to IT, or vice versa. Um, I get different answers, all the time.
Yeah, it's probably dependent on who's doing the hiring,
Yeah,
and it might even be dependent on who their team is. Like if they're
right.
full of a bunch of people coming from IT security, boy, that someone with operations experience might be looked at as this is what we need.
And the
We need,
role. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Okay. But I would encourage people from both sides. There's a lot of opportunities out there. I don't think either experience would preclude you from getting a great job in this field.
And the other thing I would add to that is when you consider, so uh, I don't know if we'll mention names, but there are some really good people. I'll say where he's at. He knows who he is. He's over at Mandiant, but someone that if you're going toward to a vendor and say you have asset owner experience, right, and you have maybe not the trained, but the inherent skill sets and just ability to be customer facing, to listen, right, and interact with somebody outside of your group, right, a customer. um, those kind of people can be lethal is not even necessarily like a salesperson or a pre-sales engineer, but just working for a vendor. So I wish more would consider it, because I've heard some really good stories, numerous ones, of ones that made that jump and have been hitting home runs.
We're going to get a related question to that. So I'm going to save my comment on that. The next one, and this was the question that we got most of all, and we even touched on it in our last conversation on the show, was about certification. And this, you must get this all the time just based on the
Every
responses
day.
we got. But I'll take the most simple one. What certifications are paid the most attention by companies hiring technical roles in this space?
Yeah.
You can frame your answer however you want. You can be direct. You can talk about certifications in general, but we got that question in all different forms coming in.
Yeah, no, let's be direct with it. Most of the time, it doesn't matter. Um, it's not that they're not important, because they do. It shows you accomplished something, right? It shows you took the initiative to go get it, to put the time in to study, and I would say especially in earlier in your career, those matter, right? It's a way in, it's a door opener, right? And I think from that stance, they definitely matter. But I think any certification, no matter what it is, I think the worth of it is really based upon the individual and what they do with the knowledge that they get, right? Dale, you and I talked about this. Look, I'm a pretty decent test taker. A lot of times I'll forget the stuff that was on that test. But the stuff that I'm really passionate about, right, I'm diving into after that test, right? So the people that take those certifications, and they're taking that certification and earning that certification because it's their career and they take it seriously, and they're using it to grow as a professional. With that mindset, then it's worth its weight in gold. Specifically from hiring managers, I can't remember if I said this on your last podcast, but I'll say this. Um, there's a few that will maybe pique interest, and the exact comment I've heard a few times was, "Okay, they have this, so they at least know something, right?"
Mm.
But they want to know what you've done. Um, if you tell them that you've built a home lab and talk to them about what you've built, that's going to get them excited. I've seen it actually twice within probably the past few weeks, where someone actually listed that on their resume. And they didn't go much detail, but it was just a few tidbits about their home lab. And both times that it was listed, the hiring manager brought it up during the interview. Never even mentioned anything to me about it, but did bring it up during the interview. So
Mm.
things like that is just displaying this is someone who's naturally curious and wants to learn, right?
Yeah. It's a tough topic. I think you're right in saying, well, first, why are you getting this certificate? Why are you doing this? And if it's clearly for learning, then it almost doesn't matter whether it helps you with the job or not. I mean, it's almost a side benefit if you decided you want to go to, ICS 515 or whatever to learn about responding and detecting incidents and responding to them. That's great. Then you learn that. I will tell you that I think this is very similar to I entered really the security world as an independent consultant back in 98. And I did go get my CISSP way back in 98. I was number 11,406, I think. So it was very early, but I don't think it did much for me, to be honest with you. I think what I got a lot more out of was, I guess, finding a project that I found interesting and I could have an impact on, and contributing to those projects. And then I could point to something. For example, I could point, hey, we did the first IDS signatures. Or if you look at what's coming up now, like the PLC top 20 list, if you could say, hey, I contributed to this, and you see this, and you see, oh, this person's on this podcast talking about this list, things of that nature, I would probably say you'd get a better ROI on your investment working on your personal brand. And I always recommend Tom Peters' Brand You 50 book, as it's a tiny little book that can help you do that. But on the other hand, I say that, and yet I did go get my CISSP. So I got to
Well,
play it out of both sides. But I think my branding efforts helped me a lot more than my certificates.
of the ones, it's funny you mentioned that one because that's one that does carry a little bit of weight. It does,
But
and I
it
think
didn't
there.
it didn't in 98. See, I think we're back where it was when that was in 98, just because
Yeah,
there were so few out there
yeah,
that you put it on there and people are like, "What's this?" I don't know
yeah.
what that is.
The other thing to note is, I guess the caveat to that is if you consider um, if it's a hiring manager that's filling a role working with the Fed, for example, sometimes
Mhm.
they're required, right?
Oh, yeah.
So if you're doing anything with the federal government, if you're over in the DC area, I mean, look, to have those, yeah, you want them, right? Because I mean,
I
you won't even be able to work on the project otherwise.
What about, the large consulting firms? I would think they might be the ones that would like to say that you had a certificate. Are you
They,
seeing
they
any of
do.
them?
Yeah, we've only worked directly with two of them, but both of them do, and that's, I mean, the large consulting firms are they appreciate certificates. They do.
Okay. Okay, moving on here. We had, let's see. I'm trying to get into ICS security, but I cannot get an interview, even though I have many years' experience with IT as a leader. Security isn't my focus, but part of my job. Where should I upskill first? So having trouble even getting an interview because they're just in a related field.
Yeah,
How would you respond to that?
that's something I talk about just about multiple times a week, with people that reach out, and it's tough. Um, when you have somebody that, especially that's a professional, right? Um, they're not a year out of school, and they've maybe made some money, and maybe been promoted a few times, something like that, and they're trying to break into a space that they are seemingly passionate about and are interested in, and then are maybe disqualified because they don't have whatever keyword it is on the resume, right? um, that one's tough, but I'd say to break in, and we were talking about somebody more senior, right?
No, this is probably maybe someone 5 years into their career, if
Okay,
I'd
so
have to guess.
maybe 5 years in. um, I think probably the single most important thing somebody can do is network. You talk about personal brand, right? So when you're networking, that's what you're doing, right? You're
Mhm.
building that kind of personal
Sure.
brand. And then I think most people get jobs from people they know, or they come from referrals. If I'm from the people that I know are good and I respect, right? If they send me a referral, that's somebody that I can generally count on is going to be a pretty strong candidate, right? And the ones that are really really elite, when they refer somebody over, that carries a lot of weight with me. So if you can network, right, and show interest, and attend the conferences, attend these meetups, There's so many different things you can do. Get a part of these different groups. Get involved on just LinkedIn, right? I mean, there's all kinds of groups. There's groups on WhatsApp, Telegram. There's all kinds of groups that you can get involved with, and kind of just get yourself networked. So when you're networking with the right people, then those people work at the places you're probably going to be applying. And when they say, "Hey, so and so is applying over here," they don't have experience, but man, they're awesome. They've been talking to me for months about different things within the space, and they're constantly learning. They have a good mentor. Those kind of things. When they're saying that to their HR department or the hiring manager, right? That is a big leg in. That's a really, really big leg in. Other than that, kind of where you upskill first, I mean, that's super dependent on the role, right?
Mm. Okay. Yeah. It's funny. This is a little bit related to my article last week. I think there's going to be this role for an OT professional. And you get into all sorts of definitions on what that means. What I'm talking about here is someone who is responsible for things like the network infrastructure, Active Directory, backup and recovery, updating systems, security patching, configuration management, all the sorts of things. Some of those I realize are IT security roles, but a lot of those are just IT roles. And I think if this person asking the question is currently in IT, this might actually be a two-step process for you. First of all, are you in an organization that has OT? Because if not, you got to get to a company that has OT.
Yep.
I guess
Yep.
you could interview directly for that job, but I think you'd have a much easier time if you could get into a quality organization that has OT on the IT side
Yep.
and then start offering your services to help them with OT.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, if the operations people trust you with their switches and installing their servers and running their Active Directory, they're going to love you for everything else because it's purely they care more about trust than they do about skill set, really, a lot of times. And once they trust you, then oh yeah, you can do this security. We want this person because we trust them. Keep these other people out. We trust them. I've
Mhm.
had that exact conversation many times where operation says we hate IT, but Steve and Janet, they're good. They
Send
get
them.
us. They can come in here and they can do the stuff, but
Yeah.
the rest of them just stay away. So I would say maybe chunk it two step if you can. Get in the right company that has it, and then move your way in over there. Would be
Yeah.
my advice.
And especially, and I think that's a good piece of advice. And I can't remember if we talked about this last time, but especially somebody more senior.
Hmm.
If you're working at in the IT, department of a utility, man, you're just a few steps away, or maybe,
Yeah.
right down the road from somebody in OT. Go over there and buy them lunch,
Hmm.
take them lunch and learn from them, make those relationships.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we did have a related question. David, I think you know David. He is a little more experienced, so he has decades of experience, but his experience is in the ICS sectors. So maybe oil and gas or water or something like that, but not ICS security. How does someone with specific industry experience, relationships, and business development results with a passion for the subject of OT cyber transfer that into the cybersecurity industry?
Well, David's actually, he's doing it. He's doing what you need to do. He
Okay.
is. So I think what David's doing great. And when someone tells me, Dale, I think I mentioned this last time, hey, I'm really, this is an easy space to get excited about, right?
Hmm.
You guys are doing cool things, and, things that are, keeping people safe, and, it's a hot space. So it's not unheard of to me or shocking to me that someone would want to be involved in it, right? But I always kind of ask, well, what have you done to kind of get involved? And they're
Mm.
like, well, there's not a good answer. You know, um, there's got to be a good answer there. If someone asks you that and you're saying you want to get involved, you better have a lot of things to list of what you're doing to get involved. So one thing I think from his perspective, if you're talking about sales, BD is network. Um, he has definitely done that. And, I was texting with two people yesterday that he brought up, that he'd reached out to for no other reason than, hey, I just want to learn, right? He's on, he gets on LinkedIn. He sees the people, that are talking about OT security. He sees, he's connecting with them, asking them questions. That's the best thing, especially in a sales, slash BD role. I mean, that's exactly what you have to do. And it kind of goes back. I don't know if we're drawing a common conclusion with just how important networking is, but especially in that side of the house, yeah, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I might have a different take on that, but I'm going to save it too because I think we have a more applicable question coming up. And we have a related question from your survey. What can I do to get an interview as a successful technology salesperson outside of ICS within ICS Cyber? And I was actually a little surprised by that question and even David's question because I've seen in a lot of times when I'm interviewing people from the companies or I'm getting demonstrations of their projects or press releases or that, a lot of these people are coming from companies like Symantec.
Right.
They're coming from a lot of security companies or they're coming from non-OT worlds into OT. So I didn't think it was that hard to have a related, let's say you were doing IT security sales to get into OT security sales. Are you finding that to be harder? Am I misinformed there?
Um, Man, I can go on to a long answer on that. So I'll tell you some things that I've noticed over the years,
Okay.
specifically with talking about salespeople. I think if you're in OT sales and say you're trying to go into one of these vendors, the OT securities side, you have to you have to deal with, in some cases, much shorter sales cycles, even though the sales cycles are long. If you're, selling PLCs, right, the life cycle's, a lot longer, right? And how they're bought, right? Is it software versus hardware? So the buying cycles are just in the way they buy is different. I think they tend to prefer people with software experience because that's kind of, I
Okay.
mean, as you know, right, that's kind of the way they're going right now. Um, as far as where they come from, I think security, the reason why that's probably given some precedence is because, security, they've had the on-prem, a lot of them are in the cloud now, right? And so they'll have both experiences, right? Have to be used to selling to the enterprise. I mean, that should be a given. And I think they see as, okay, well, since we're going to have two kind of buyers, maybe two different types of stakeholders in the sales process. You have the OT and then you
Hmm.
have the IT side. If we get somebody that's had a good track record of selling, not even just security. I mean, we've seen some with success coming from just enterprise IT software. But if you've had a good track record selling to the target, clients that we're going after in the given territory, then you could be successful, right? Because it's just hey, Mr. CIO at XYZ company,
Hmm.
asset owner, can you introduce me to the operation side?
Right.
Can you give me an intro in there? And that's the hope. Um, and again, I've seen some people. I was actually talking with somebody about this today, that it was a salesperson who the reason they did not work out is they could not. It sounds silly even saying it out loud. They couldn't get used to going into an environment where you're going to have to put on some steel-toed boots or put on a hard hat, or put on a hazmat suit or whatever it is. They just couldn't get used to that. And this was a
Huh.
very successful security salesperson. So that I think is probably an anomaly,
Yeah.
but it does happen.
Well, what I heard there that, I think was really a good gem is that you might want to. So this person says they are a successful technology salesperson. So you must have a lot of contacts, a lot of people that trust you, that you're going to treat them well and treat them fairly and give them a good product or service. And maybe I think this is what you said, look at the overlap there of who are who is one step away in OT from those people that they could
Right.
introduce you to. So that to me would be the win for that question.
Well, and
I
then if
think
you
you can
when I
go
look
ahead.
at salespeople, it's pretty. I mean, I'm a former sales guy, so maybe it's kind of built into to know what to look for. But I want to know, look, are you selling in the relevant territory, right? It's number one. Are you selling in to relevant companies, right? If you're selling to only financial services, you might be a great salesperson, but that ramp time to get up to be hitting quota is going to be longer for you, no matter how good you are, because you're going to have to develop essentially a whole new territory or a
Yeah.
whole new group of clients. But especially the ones that have been selling to relevant clients in the given territory, enterprise, hopefully software, definitely, enterprise technology, but they've been selling to the same ones, for,
Yep.
in different places they've been at. I mean, the first thing that tells me is you have clients that trust you, right?
Hmm.
They're buying from you at when you were at, Dell, and then they were buying from you when you were at Snowflake, and then et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's another thing I really look at because their relation, obviously they have relationships that are valued, and their clients are continually buying from them, and those can probably get pretty easy introductions into the OT side of the house from the clients they
Yeah.
already have.
No, that I think that makes great sense. Okay, we've got one last question in this category, which was our longest category. And I want you to really listen to this because let's try to give this questioner direct advice, not generic advice. So this is Mustafa writes, and we got a lot of questions came in from the Middle East region. I was surprised because a lot of people told me where they were from, and
Mhm.
but this one is I have almost 10 years of experience in cybersecurity, pre-sales, post-sales, where I handled various security products. And from the last 3 years, started handling ICS security solutions like industrial IDS, some small engagements of ICS security architecture and controls discussion. I'm planning to get certified in SANS and other ICS certification. What would be my options in terms of career roadmap and what all roles I can pursue?
He's involved right now in what was it that you said? Did I hear pre-sales?
Pre-sales, post-sales, and he's done some selling of industrial IDS solutions and even a little bit of consulting, it sounds like, with
Did,
security architecture and controls.
did he say if he worked for like a vendor of some sort?
Doesn't he must work for a vendor if he's doing pre and
or
post
or
sales.
or well, so I'll say this. So, and the question was one more time, Dale.
What would be his options in terms of career roadmap? So he's
Okay.
got this background. Where would you be trying to place him? What
So
what
the
sort of
first thing
companies, what sort of
is
roles?
yeah, the first thing I'd want to understand, were you? It sounds like he is more of a technical resource, right?
Yes.
So obviously, been customer facing. That's the
Hmm.
first thing you kind of want to vet out. Somebody might be, fantastic technically, but if they hate being in front of a customer, probably not pre-sales, right? Or probably
Hmm.
not post-sales, right? Which is fine. And but somebody that is, pre-sales would probably be a great. And this is um, I haven't talked with this person, so
Oh, completely unfair.
yeah,
I like to do
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, it is. But I'll say first of all, send me a message on LinkedIn, and hopefully we can help. But yeah, I mean, I think if you enjoy being customer facing, it sounds like he has a lot of relevant experience too, right? Especially if he's been the past 3 years, working with on the OTICS side, for sure. I mean, pre-sales engineer, engineering roles. You can even look at some of the consultancies, right? I mean, it's not
Hmm.
you're not selling anything, but you're going in there, you're talking with clients, you're listening and
Hmm.
advising on a solution, right? It's the same kind of thing, without maybe the pressure of some of the quotas. Um, you know, you could even be great on the asset owner side, but
Yeah.
when I hear customer facing experience, having a very strong, technical skill set and that technical acumen, and having also the experience of working with customers, that's pretty lethal combination, to be a pretty strong sales engineer for sure at a vendor.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right in terms of where it'd be strongest. I do think with this kind of background, you could be in high demand. I think,
Very high demand.
you really
Yeah.
figure out what it is you want to do in the direction you'd like to at least pursue, not for the rest of your life, but for the next,
Yeah.
2 to 5 years. And you probably can, if you can get the right contacts and get the right interviews, you probably will have quite a few choices.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Dale,
Now,
that's something I want to say. One thing to that is
sure.
that's something for everybody kind of looking at this space is there are still, I mean, we did and I can't remember, I think it was maybe 5 years ago. There was a search we ran on LinkedIn, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was like ICS or OT, industrial control system and cybersecurity. And on planet Earth, there were like it was like 200, almost 300 people. Okay.
Yeah.
You do the same search today, it's like 10,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there's, if you have the full, LinkedIn premium, recruiter package, but, um, my point is there's still only a very few select people, and I have actually a list of just my opinion, and then also ones that I've been told are really good, of the ones that would be considered experts, right? But if you're getting into this career, like someone like Canyon, right, or even somebody that wants to just transition into a career where they're going to have a lot of demand for their skill set, this is just all the more reason to get involved in this space in particular. I mean, I
Hmm.
could go into what you're getting paid as well, which is significant, right?
Yeah.
Because the skill set's so valuable. So, hopefully everyone's just encouraged to get more involved.
Okay. Let's transition now to the questions for the experienced ICS security professional. They're in the field, having some level of success, and they're looking to grow their career. So the first question I had, this was from your survey: should I work for a company needing security or a vendor providing a security solution? Is one more valued than the other?
Um, that's kind of goes back to the question about where do I prefer someone, or where does a hiring manager prefer someone to come from? The OT side or the security side, IT side, whatever. Um, and I think so. Some of it is going to be, hiring manager. Look at the hiring manager that you're going to interview with, right? See where they come from, and just have that in
No, I
mind.
think this is a little different. I think what he's saying is, should I go work for an OT security vendor or an asset owner? And
Well,
if I make that choice, which one's going to pay more? Which one values my skills more?
yeah. So again, this is going to be one of those ones that gets me in trouble, Dale. I wouldn't say. Look, I mean, I think if you work for a vendor, consider that you're going to be, client facing, right? You're going to be working with a number of different clients, and like say in a pre-sales role, you'll be working with clients, then working with another client. You'll be, running, 10 POCs at a time, right?
Hmm.
So you're going to be, it's going to be maybe a little hectic, but some people they thrive in that, right?
Hmm.
If you're working with a, for an asset owner or maybe a consultancy, you're going to be a little bit more project based, and you might be, deployed on a project for, a month, 3 months, 6 months, right? But working with the same
Hmm.
people over and over. Um, so I would consider your preferences there. As far as the pay, I think that on the asset owner side, if on the consultancy side, first we'll say, um, especially on some of the federal, projects, the pay can be, significant, right? A lot of them are 1099, not all of them,
Hmm.
but a lot of them are 1099. So there's that. Um, but the challenge there is, you get on a project and the project completes, with a in-demand skill set, most of the time, yeah, you're going to be fine. There's going to be another one to pick back up, but maybe there's not. You're kind of just, hanging out, right? Whereas if you go, look on the vendor side, right? If you're, say, let's say a pre-sales engineer, say you link up and you have a great relationship with the salesperson, it's kind of a booming market right now. Quotas are being met. You're blowing out your number, and salesperson's good, and you've retired quota in July. Then yeah, the money's going to be pretty good there, right? But there's also going to be times where it's challenging, and
Mhm.
the quarter's just tough. The big, whale deals that you were looking for didn't come to fruition for whatever reason. And, there's the stress of carrying a quota, right? So they're completely different, roles and considerations for both. Without speaking to the person, I think it would be tough to give any definitive answer because it could depend on them.
Well, let's rank them one. So if we looked at consultancy, OT security vendor, OT asset owner, let's rank them one, two, three in terms of for someone with a similar skill set in
Mhm.
terms of pay. Is it
So,
consultant, vendor, asset owner
well, keep in mind too,
in
the
general?
consultant they're not going to get the benefits and things like that, right? So when we're talking 1099, you're a contractor, right? So
Well, if you went to work for Accenture or Deloitte or 1898 or something like that, I'm talking about not as an independent
all
player.
those guys pay great, top notch. You're going to get me in a lot of trouble. So I will say this: asset owners are generally going to be a little bit lower, right?
Yeah,
The consultancies they do pay well. It's going to depend on their role for sure.
right.
I would say in general, generally speaking, the vendors are going to be paying the most.
Oh, really? Okay,
Mhm. It depends
interesting.
which vendor, but yeah, that's definitely the case. But if keep in mind too, like I mentioned, the ones within any kind of federal program, those can get pretty lucrative for
Well,
sure.
and the vendors also, at least my belief is, those are heavily vendor pay is heavily determined by how hot the market is. So hiring between, and you don't have, I'll mention the names, but like your Dragos, Clarity, Nozomi, they're fighting over a lot of the same people. Mandiant, you could put them in the list. So
Right.
I could see the vendor pay today would be really hot, but then if that market all of a sudden isn't as hot, then I could see that going up and down. Whereas asset owner and consultant are probably a little bit more stable in terms of the rates, would
Yeah,
be my experience.
they are, and just keep in mind too, the nature of the work is going to be so different.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people need to understand when you're working for a vendor, again, especially if it's anything like on the, we'll say, technical pre-sale side, right? I mean, you're going to be working with numerous clients at a time, right? Not just one, project that you're just the only one you're working on, right?
Okay. I'm going to ask you to rank them in another dimension in a little bit here.
Okay.
I want to tackle this question though a little bit, because I almost think that, again, we've mentioned being self-aware. I think that's so important here because to me, almost as important as a category is the culture you're going into,
For
and
sure.
how is that culture going to fit you. So are you someone who likes to be given specific tasks and do those tasks and move on, or are you someone who chafes at that? Are you on someone, you do want a lot of supervision or minimal supervision? Do you want to be challenged, given a green field to say, hey, go solve this problem and come back with an answer, or not? So that's where I personally have always had the issues with when I'm choosing is, because I chafe a little bit at certain types of structure. That to me would be more important. I could go work for an asset owner if they said, hey, we have this gigantic problem, go out and figure out how to solve it. That could be as interesting to me as working for a consultancy, for
Right.
example.
You
So
get
I
a
would,
lot of leeway. Yeah.
yeah, and I see, having being a consultant for so many years, I see even companies in the same sector doing the same thing have very different cultures. And I've said I could never work there, but yeah, I could see myself in this one. So I just encourage people to look at that quite a bit.
That's huge. I mean, and that goes, look, I mean, culture in general. So there are a lot of companies, every client we have, when we're doing an intake, which is us taking in, talking to a hiring manager
Hmm.
or, whoever, and under getting a good understanding of the role. And then, culture is always brought up, right? Not 95% of the time it's always brought up, but there are a few companies that really do vet on the things that are on the break room walls, right, or on the remote, office walls, right.
Yeah.
And so I think for anybody looking for a job in this space or otherwise, vet out culture. and there's different ways you can do that. But you could look at something like Glassdoor, you know,
Yeah.
but also have conversations with them, because it might be a cool job. If you hate the people you work with, you hate the style, you hate the culture, you're going to be unhappy.
Well, I know for me, one of the big ones is change.
Hmm.
How how are they when it comes to change? If they're very rigid and slow moving, then it's not a fit for me. Yeah, just
Hmm.
like S4 and everything I do, it's all early adopters. So for me, having someone who's an early adopter would be absolutely key. For another person, that might not be something they want to get involved in. The bleeding edge is called that because it gets kind of bloody sometimes.
Hmm.
Okay, let's
True.
jump here. Let's
Yeah.
jump in, and we got a couple more quick ones on this one. This was actually my question. You're going to hate this. How
Uh,
long should an ICS security professional stay with one company? And how
now,
important is moving around for career development?
well, you move, when Mark calls with the opportunity, that's just too good to pass up, obviously. But no, look, I can give you a good answer on that, and it's an accurate one, I think. So, um, without mentioning names, but when he watches this, he'll probably chuckle, because he knows this is the
Hmm.
case. There is an executive level leader at one of the vendors that's out there that places a big precedence on, or a big emphasis on, has this person jumped, right? Do they continuously jump from job to job?
Hmm.
You can explain away, a bad decision here and there, but if it's continuous through the career of staying somewhere less than, we'll call it 3 years, then it can be a little concerning, right? It's definitely a red flag. When I'm looking at it, I don't necessarily judge it right from there. I want to have a conversation, right? I'm all about having conversation, because people are going to tell their stories better than LinkedIn or a resume, right? Um, but if I see you've had a 20-year career, you haven't stayed anywhere longer than maybe 1 4-year stint and a 2-year stint, and then you're just kind of bouncing around, chances are this phone call is probably not going to be worth my time, honestly. And when you look at somebody that's been there, though, especially at the executive level leadership, um,
Hmm.
and even just we'll even say a leader, if you're a CRO and haven't stayed somewhere past a year and 2 months, you can't accomplish anything in an executive level leadership role in a year and 2 months. So.
Right. Let's flip it though. Let's look at the not the entry level, but let's say someone between 5 and 20 years in their career.
Mhm.
Um, I would think you'd need a pretty solid reason to stay somewhere more than 5 years. I've seen examples. I've seen Brian Owen, for example, at OSI Soft has been there forever, but he keeps getting new challenges at that job. Uh,
Mhm.
I had a guy, my first employee, Matt Franz. Cisco moved him around about every 4 years, and he was always doing new things. So, but if you're in the same role doing the same thing for more than 5 years, I begin to wonder if that's hurting your career prospects over the long run.
No, it does. So you actually brought up a good point. So when I'm considering somebody, it all goes back to, why did they move? Right.
Hmm.
So if they told, if the explanation was, well, you know what, I have an end goal of this, right? This is where I'm trying to get. And let's say it's a pre-sales security engineer.
Hmm.
So my first job, I was an IT admin, right? I was fresh out of school. I wanted to learn some basic things. Then I was a network engineer, right? Stayed there for 2 years. And then I went into a junior security, maybe I went and worked in a SOC, right? I was only there a year and a half. And, now I'm working, now I'm trying to get a job as a pre-sales engineer, but we're talking someone who was, to say, sub 10 years experience, but they're explaining to me that they're executing on a plan, right? They
Hmm.
have an end goal of where they're trying to get. And they were an IT, they were an admin, network engineer, and then they worked in a SOC, and they want to be a pre-sales engineer, right? And say they're looking at a role that's, trying to, we generally do, more senior roles, but say they were working on a role that was say it's an inside sales engineer role, right? And they told me, look, I'm great with people. I love people. And they present well on the phone. They present as professionals, as someone that um, can work with clients, but just hasn't yet, right? For whatever reason, um, then that's okay. But you have to be able to explain those jumps. And again, look, nobody's had just the perfect run. Very few have had just the perfect run of, what, I never made a bad decision. And especially when you start working with like early stage companies,
Yep.
the fail rate's just high. So
Okay, let's get to this. Was a survey. I think this is a great question.
okay.
How should I be networking to grow my mid-level career into an in-demand senior level position?
So specifically on networking, um, LinkedIn, obviously, right? That's kind of the bread and butter. I mean, I would think when I'm advising somebody of how to kind of network and kind of grow their career and kind of, take that next step is, one, you got to be a student of the space you work. You have to be involved in those discussions, and that can be found obviously in LinkedIn. You can see what people are talking about, pain points, what's hot, new technologies, that kind of thing. But there are so many other ways. When we're talking about this space, obviously, your conference, Dale, right? Give you a plug for S4, but it's fantastic. There's other conferences you can attend. B-sides groups, local meetups. Derek Harp's group. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do to network. Again, WhatsApp has I can't even remember the name of it. I could look on my phone, but it's a SCADA something. But it's a channel where people are troubleshooting things, more or less. We'll just say that. And but people are there. There's friendships that are created there. So you have to be proactive about your networking. And so one thing that is important to realize for candidates too is networking is not sending a request hoping someone connects with you. It's nurturing that relationship, right? So you have somebody that you commented on, say, they're an influential person, whatever space it is, you send them a note, you guys connect, maybe have a conversation, nurture that relationship, right?
Yeah.
You should do it because one, you care, and you appreciate the time they spent, but also professionally. That person, maybe it's not a company, that's going to hire you today, but if you nurture their relationship, they might go to bat for you, a year from now, right? And so the other important thing there is play the long game when doing it.
I would think I even want to expand on this, and this is not some brilliant thought that I came up with, but it seems to be underutilized and certainly not very common. It's you can read it in like Gary V's jab, 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 right hook. This idea of give, 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 and then maybe eventually take or
Mhm.
ask. You can't actually take, but give, 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 ask. Uh, I see very little of that. Most of the time when I get requests to network, it's, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I, I'd
Mhm.
like to have a conversation. And I do some of those. I can't do all of them. I like to do some of those, but I will tell you that I appreciate much more when someone sends me a link to some article that might be appropriate. Maybe I
Mhm.
write an article and they say in the comments, hey, did you see this? This was really cool. You might enjoy this. Or how about this sort of thing? Or they contribute to a project, as I've mentioned before. Or let's say if I was very involved in the top 20 PLC security coding practices, if all of a sudden they're attending the meeting and contributing, that networking means a lot more than someone reaching out to me and say, hey, let's connect, let's network, let's pick our brain, let's get to know each other. I would highly encourage people to find ways to give back to the person before they even ask for that conversation. I think they'll be much
Huge.
more successful.
Yeah, earn the right to ask for the conversation, right?
Yeah.
I think I don't know if that was in a book or just something an old sales manager told me, but that's true. And I think if people are more cognizant of that, or they think of how can I earn the right for this conversation of someone that I'm asking their time, and it could be something as simple as you know, uh, being diligent about following what they're posting about with the company they work for, the problems they may be having. And so,
Yeah.
like you said, when they stumble across an article, then, or when you stumble across an article, send it to them. Say, hey, I see you've talked a lot about this. I don't know if you've seen this, right? That just
Hmm.
shows you're trying to, provide some value and not just asking, hey, I need a favor, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's important.
Okay, let's get now to the last section here, working with recruiters, getting interviews.
Yep.
So Ryan wrote in, Ryan is getting almost no callbacks or responses to his resume. He wrote, the challenge I have with recruiters is being able to display on what is supposed to be a 2-page resume all that I've done. I grew up in system admin, but then a move to another state led to a job as a junior controls engineer. So some pertinent practice plan was to find an IT role, but I'm 8 years in and have advanced in my career to a leadership role with a decent sized P&L responsibility. He's now working on the security side, but without that title. He has a few certs, tons of experience deploying and configuring firewalls and such that he's upskilled on his own. So how can he succinctly display on this skill set on his resume or job application to a recruiter who seemingly has no idea about this industry? Or more importantly, how can I get noticed? So it sounds like
Yeah.
he's got a very applicable background. He's sending in a lot of resumes, but he's hearing crickets. What does he have to change?
Well, Ryan, I hope you gave Dale your LinkedIn because you're probably going to get some callbacks, from these hiring managers after that. Yeah, very relevant experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's good and good for you. So, as far as how to get noticed, I would say I was just sharing this with somebody, earlier, but when you're thinking about things like resumes, and by the way, I haven't looked at them, but I did watch a plug. If you guys know Gerald Auger, he was just on Clint's, Third Gen podcast, and they were talking about Simply Cyber, his website, and I think they have some, and it's linked on my site too, but they have some free resume template, examples. But I was talking to somebody about resumes today, and so I'd advise have 2 resumes, right? So one resume is the one that's going to have all the keywords, all your certs, and it's going to have a snippet of the job description and just honestly as many keywords as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to get picked up by the spam filters or the keyword filters that some of the larger organizations use. But when you're presenting, especially through a recruiter, right? And then to a hiring manager, you want a presentation, a cover letter, right? But not the typical cover letter that most of us think of, with the 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, whatever it is. That's too long, by the way. But a presentation page of what have you done. So if you've configured firewalls, or if you've your efforts led to a reduction in spend of whatever it was, or a percentage, of the enterprise to be more secure, or decrease downtime, then you need to state those things. And there's a number of ways I've seen that done. There's I won't plug them, but there is a service that does that. That makes it a very kind of gooey, nice to look at, and it's essentially just your highlights page, is what I call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when working with recruiters, what I ask candidates to do, because look, at the end of the day, while I'm actually looking at Pascal's book right over here, and I joke that I'm probably the only recruiter on earth that's reading books and watching YouTube videos on PLC programming and Wireshark for idiots. I'm not technically savvy enough to properly vet you in depth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're working with a recruiter, what you want to get to them in either, whether it's via a highlights page or via just conversation, and make sure they get it, because you want to make sure you're being presented the right way. And I ask candidates for these things because my line is just, look, my job is to make sure I present you in the best and the most accurate way possible. I don't want you to not get an interview because of because I misinterpreted something, or I missed something, or you just didn't tell me something that would have been the reason for a hiring manager to say, we have to talk to this person, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So prepare that, and it's really important to prepare, because when you have it, pre-interview, managers, hiring managers, they want to know about your outcomes. And that's really what a good resume should be. What have you accomplished in the roles that you've had? you know so if you prep something like that, put it together. Doesn't It never needs to be over one page. Um, but yeah, I think that would be helpful.
And I think that's really good advice in terms of what you want to submit and be prepared for in the conversation. I think he's having trouble even getting that first discussion. He's sending this in
Yeah,
blindly, and you just can't in these days. I mean, I'm sure it happens. I'm sure people get hired off of just resume submittals and eventually make it through that filter you talk about and get interviewed and such. But if you really want to make progress, you have to get a warm introduction into an
yeah, it helps.
opportunity. I mean, you're worth all the effort that you put. You could probably take 90% of the effort you're putting into sending in all these resumes to all these different places and put it into getting 2 or 3 warm introductions, and you'd be much better served. And
And
that goes to the networking and all the other things we've been talking about, I think.
yeah, and then if you're applying to a role, you know, I always tell people you have to be, with what I do. I'm a lot of recruiters, they look for keywords on resumes, and it's like, okay, we found enough of them. We found of 10, we found 6. Perfect. Let's send them in, right? Like my clients, they'll tell you, if we're getting somebody from, Verge, like we need to look at them because they're relevant,
Hmm.
because I bother them with so many questions. And
Yeah.
I have a good idea what they want. So, but I'm very targeted. In a
Yeah.
hunt for a job, they need to be doing the same thing. So if you see that you want to, work in this space, then you better do some research on it. And if you found a company, maybe it's a local utility, right, that's in the backyard, get on LinkedIn. There's all kinds of different tools that you can use to find people. I wish I could share all of them here, but find out who's there. Don't be afraid to send a note to a hiring manager, right? It's not going to hurt you. Don't make it a long diatribe of why they need to hire you.
Yeah.
And also apply online, right? You need to do that, because otherwise the hiring manager is just going to tell you to go do that. But let them know, hey, I did apply online. Just want to introduce myself. This is kind of my relevant
Yeah.
experience, whatever it is, but be proactive and targeted in your search.
Okay. Well, as we're running long here on this, we have a question on time. So why don't we end on
Yeah.
this question? So this is interesting. This was anonymous. This person did not want me to mention their name, but they said, "What would you recommend when you are working with one of the top ICS recruiters, a recruiter who prides himself on being different than the other recruiters out there, and you have a great synergy going on, and all of a sudden that recruiter ghosts you? Should you
Keep
A,
calling them, man.
keep reaching out to the recruiter, reminding him you are waiting, or B, assume the recruiter is not even interested in replying because your profile doesn't match the current job he's submitting you
Yeah,
for?"
look, with recruiters, you have to keep reaching out to them, right?
Okay.
It's like with anything. A lot of things go on in everyone's day to day lives, right? But you get the answer to the question, right? If you're not a fit, then you're not a fit, and that's okay. But get the answer to the question, and they owe you that. So my advice would be. Be patient. It's also going to depend on, they may have, well, I'll say this: recruiters have a lot of battles that we fight that you guys never know about,
Hmm.
which is fine. We love doing it, but so be patient, because sometimes it might mean slow hiring managers and slow, whatever it is. So we have to navigate that on our end, but don't ever just not reach out again. Right? Send a text. If you're only emailing, send them a text. If you don't have their cell phone number, give them a call. Right? But yeah, keep reaching out for sure. I mean, because at the end of the day, we all want, if it wraps up, um, if there's a reason why you weren't hired, it might not be what you want to hear, but you'd like to know it. And the good ones will tell you why. It might be a little careful in what they can say, right? But generally, I think every recruiter knows that candidates want, good, honest feedback as to, why they weren't selected.
And you'd give the same advice if they were working directly with a hiring manager to keep
Yeah.
and at what cadence? I mean, if you're hitting them every day, that's probably a mistake, right?
Don't hit
If
them
you're
every day.
sending them, you would hit them every day or
Don't hit
don't?
them. Don't hit them every day. Yeah,
Okay.
no. That what you need to do is this is during the interview, you need to get an understanding of what is the timeline,
Hmm.
right? Um, some companies will have roles that they, and I'll tell you the ones that are that you hear about it a lot with are some of the consultancies, and part of that is because it's project based, and if a project's not won, then they don't need to ramp up talent, right? And then it's like, well, we might have another one coming down the road, but this one's off. But get a timeline to hire, and just get a clear understanding of what are the steps, what are the next steps. Who am I going to speak with next? Um, what has been your past experience? And hey, this has been for these roles usually a month-long process, or normally a 3-month-long process, whatever it is. um, get a good understanding of that. That way, it's already in your mind. Okay, look, I'm prepared. This is going to take a long time, right?
And that time can vary. I think you're dead on in terms of not understanding everything going on in the company and in the people that have to make the decision. Uh, and things can change unless it's like a key hire for the organization. They probably have a bunch of other things going on. This may bubble up or bubble down in importance. I was mentioning to you, I had an asset owner ask me for a certain profile. Did I know anyone who was like this? And I thought, oh, I do. I actually know someone really great. It took them 5 months before they hired her.
I
You
know.
know, I was actually a bit embarrassed that I even recommended it because she kept coming back. Hey, I'm not hearing from these people. I'm not hearing from these people. And you know, I don't think it was in this company's interest to delay, but it just wasn't on the top of their list. It was probably something fairly far down on the list. And when they finally got rid of everything else, and they got to it, I think a lot of times we take what's happening in our life and think the priorities are the same or should be the same for the company, and just in reality they're not. But at what point, though, if you were advising, let's say, a candidate, let's say they found a really good job they liked, but they weren't hearing from them, things weren't closing in a month or two, at what point would you say, hey, you shouldn't be waiting for these people anymore, you should be moving on and looking for another place to land?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, nobody is ever going to take care of you more than you, right?
Hmm.
So, if you're looking for a job, look for your job. And
Hmm.
if you're be active in your search. Again, be proactive about it, right?
Hmm.
And I know in this space it's pretty tight knit, so some cases you got to be careful. But um, the point is you gotta you can only do what you can do. I think you always have to leave, every interview, every experience, with a good note. People are feeling good about it. Um, Understand that sometimes budgets don't allow, the
Hmm.
hire. They may really like you, but budgets don't allow it. Or, man, we just can't find what the fit is. Maybe this person we really see. Um, their value, but we don't have a role open for them right
Yeah.
now. And I think you see that a lot, especially with some of the vendors that we all know. um, they want to get people on board, but the way they have to hire is not going to be the same way like a Cisco can hire. They have
Hmm.
to be very strategic in their hires and very calculated with them to make sure they're getting on the right people at the right time. So we've also, and the other thing I'd say is if it's with any of these vendors, be patient. I've seen numerous times where somebody was, um, you know, we've had a few just here in the past month where the last time they interviewed was, over a year ago or a year ago, and it didn't work out. And, we told them, look, it's going to come, right?
Hmm.
It wasn't you. You did great. They love you, you know, and it did. It came to fruition, but it just took some time. But as far as how long to wait, I mean, look, I think the general rule of thumb is if you contact somebody, say you interview on a Monday, give them that week. One, you want them to commit to you. Hey, look, I should
Hmm.
know something by Wednesday. If that's what they say, follow up on Wednesday.
Hmm.
If not, wait till the end of the week. Send them a note on Friday. I'd say give it to the mid next week, and then if it gets to the point where it's 2 weeks, then send a note and just say, hey, look, just wanted to wrap up. Don't want to bug you about this, but I am still interested in the role, and express your interest if you are interested, right?
Yep.
Sometimes things just fall off, people's calendars, so
Yep.
you got to stay on them.
But leaving on a good note, and this will be my final comment, I think is really important, because let's say it's an asset owner. That asset owner gets hit with a cyber attack, they might need to hire people
Yeah.
really fast. And if they say, hey, you remember Carl, he was really great, but we didn't have a role for him. Now we got to hire 3 people by the end of the month. Let's get him back on the phone. That sort of thing. And the same would be true for startups who all of a sudden get another round of funding and need to gear up. And there's all sorts of changes like that, both pro and con. But I really appreciate you coming on the show. Is there any last message? Obviously, people, if they want to reach out to you, if you're watching this, it's vergemanagementgroup.com. Mark Hyman, HYMANVMG at Twitter. Any other way they should reach out to you if they want to get in touch or get more
Yeah,
information?
we're on a lot of the socials. I don't think we're on Snapchat or Insta yet, but we are on Facebook, LinkedIn. You can reach out to me directly. Info at the number one, VMG.com.
Okay.
Yeah, and reach out and to any of us, and we'll if we can help you out, we will.
Okay. Well, hopefully we helped some people here. Mark, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Dale.